The Greater Boise. Welcome to the October meeting of the Greater Boise Auditorium District. I am Jody Olson, the Vice Chair, sitting in for Kristen Muckow, the Chair, who's called out of town on business. Kristen is at the airport and may call in. If she does, and we have a good connection, I want to do the approvals, minutes and that sort of stuff while she's here with routine. There's nobody's made any comments.
Hey, Jody, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Kristen, are you here?
I am here.
I was just explaining that we don't know how long we have you for and how good the connection's going to be. I'm going to, on the agenda, move the minutes and the things that require approval up so you can participate.
All right, thank you.
You've reviewed those, and unless you have some comments, we'll do that. And then we'll move right to Clearwater, because I know you're interested in understanding better what they do, as we all are. How's that sound, y'all? Hearing no objections. Meeting's called to order. You need a roll call?
Yep. Ms. Muckow?
Here.
Mr. Olson?
Here.
Mr. Walker? Mr. Erkins?
Here.
Mr. Rastegar?
Here. I'd like a motion from one of you on the 4 minutes that you've been presented with. The regular September 26th meeting, the work session of September 22nd, and the work session of October 9th, the work session of October 23rd. Have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular minutes of September 26th, work session of September 22nd, work session October 9th, as well as the work session of October 23rd.
Second.
All been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Showtime, Clearwater Advisors. You leave the boss on the sideline?
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I just had to get something in my mouth really quick. I had a temporary blood sugar issue. I'm just gonna finish chewing for 1 second.
That's all right, take your time. Tell us about, while we've got you here, Bates.
Sure.
Tell us about your business. Is business good?
Absolutely. So, pleasure, members of the board, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having us. Clearwater Advisors, very quickly. For those that weren't here last time, we are an institutional fixed income asset manager. We work with institutions, so organizations such as yourself. We manage about 4 billion of assets under management, or 4 billion of assets. This is all we do in investment grade fixed income. We work primarily with corporations and institutions like yourself from a corporate cash perspective. We do have mandates across the curve. And so really the way that we think about ourselves compared to other managers out there is everything that we do is 100% customized. We don't have anything off the shelf. We don't have strategies that we try and push on our clients. We meet with our clients. We learn about cash flow requirements. We create an investment policy if it's not already created. We amend investment policies if needed, and we create a bespoke investment program tailored to the unique needs of our clients. In terms of the question, how's the business doing? It's doing great. As you all are probably aware, there's been a banking crisis with SVB earlier in the year. One of the big messages that we share with our clients is regarding counterparty risk. And for a long time, companies and organizations were ignoring counterparty risk, i.e. if I have funds in excess of the FDIC limit with banks, those are unsecured investments in that bank, and everybody largely ignored that. And when SVB went under, for the weekend, there was a lot of organizations that could not access their capital, and it forced the wider industry to acknowledge counterparty risk and re-examine that counterparty risk. And so we've been spending a lot of times with startups and other organizations working, helping them diversify counterparty risk and put together strategies that will help them achieve their financial objectives while minimizing risk. So we brought on quite a few new clients over the past year. You know, it's an interesting time in the market, and Brandon and Rhett will get to that, but our message to our clients is there's a lot of unknown unknowns out there. And the only way to protect against that is to revert to fundamental finance. Diversification and risk assessment, you know, and the standard principles that have been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years to minimize risk. So
And just remind me how long we have had a relationship and what are we completely into you now, or are we converted? And
sure, so we started last year.
About this time.
Yeah, about this time. So we've been up and running for about a year. It took a decent amount of time to work through the investment policy, the custodian transition. Remember, there was a change in custody. And so that took a few months. And so we've been up and running fully probably for about 9 months or thereabouts.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anne Marie, am I cutting you off?
No, you're great.
Okay, showtime. What are you doing with our money?
Well, it's very safe. Do I have, let's see, if where's my part of it? Should I just, want to skip over to the Clearwater section?
Yeah. give me just one second.
So, I'll just start at the beginning. So my name is Rhett Holbert. I'm your head portfolio manager. This is Brandon Beal. He is your co-head portfolio manager. We take a team approach. That way, if anything ever happens, both of us know exactly what's going on in the portfolio. Both of us are very aware and very involved. I'm going to skip a couple slides here, just in the essence of time here, to get to the most important stuff. So your portfolio is invested in the highest quality, safest investments we could find, which is US Treasuries and US agencies. So those agencies are backed by the US Treasury. This is by design, because of the state statute, you can only invest in these securities. So even though there are higher yielding securities out there in the market, you're not allowed to invest in them. So we don't even need to talk about that. Just
Would you elaborate on that state statute point, please?
yeah. So you guys are a I don't know how to. You're a district, so it's an entity that is governed by the state statutes. Those are basically laws that say what you can and can't invest in. You can invest in bank deposits, you can invest in cash, you can invest in ultra safe securities like US government bonds. At this time, we don't believe you can invest in anything riskier like equities or even corporate bonds. Now, the state statute may change, or you may find a way to work around it. Some other entities have sort of done that in the past, but as of right now, this is kind of the best you can do.
Yeah, excuse me, Mike Stoddard.
Yes, sir.
Don't we have people whose investment mandates are broader than that, who are also state agencies?
There are other government entities who have different guidelines. Yes, I mean, there are, if you've got specific statutes which address what you can invest in, then they may have greater flexibility.
So for example, the Boise City is considered a municipal corporation. That's a definition as per the statute, and they can invest in corporates. Ada County cannot. Depending on where, what you are, if you're an insurance company, there's separate statute. And so Boise Auditorium District is a district which falls under the specific statute that governs counties and municipalities similar, which says no corporate exposure.
Is that right, Anne Marie?
I'm relying on our investment advisors, but yes. we've never, under the law.
Well, put on your old banker's hat.
Well, that's what I'm saying, under the law, we cannot, and that's why, just as a side note, our bank accounts at Wells Fargo are all secured. Except for the 250,000 FDIC. They're all collateralized.
Thank you, sorry, Rhett.
Yeah, and if that ever changes, and if we ever figure out a way to work around that, we can advise on higher yielding securities while still staying very safe. But as of right now, this is what we've got. So this slide just basically shows you've got about $21.7 million invested in mostly US governments, as that pie chart shows. Some agency bonds as well. Again, those are to be thought of as equivalent risk perspective. Sometimes they just have a yield advantage over the others. So we take advantage of that where we can. Long story short, your overall average duration is 1.3 years. So that's pretty short. That's not, that means you don't have a lot of exposure. If interest rates were to keep rising, you're not going to get hurt all that much. You have maturities coming in every quarter, every year, to get your cash back. So it's all AAA rated. Well, it's AA plus rated at Fitch now because they just did a downgrade, but still AAA at Moody's. You are carrying a current yield, a book yield of 3.5%. Now, when we started this program a year ago, it was 1.73. The reason it's increased is because, as you all know, the Fed has increased rates. And we've had bonds mature, and we've been able to reinvest those at higher and higher rates. So you're still holding one or two bonds that you were holding before you hired us, maybe more than one or two, but just a few. But most of those have started to roll off, and we've been able to reinvest longer and longer. Couple of quirks and couple of anomalies have happened over this last year. So when we first got started, you had very large expenses on the horizon. You had the aquatic center being built. So we had strict instructions to keep everything really short and really liquid and just wait until those expenses were known. We got past that, and so we're now finally getting to the place where we can invest a little bit further out the curve and get some of that. So that's a good thing, because over this last year, rates have been rising, so it turned out you wanted to be really short, and you've done really well. So
That's a perfect example of how we work. When we talk to our clients and our clients say, hey, there's some cash, pretty significant cash expenses on the horizon, then we adjust the portfolio. Well, we adjust or don't make particular investments so as to address those cash flow needs. So, even if the strategy is a 1 to 3 year, if there's a large chunk of expenses coming due in 3 to 6 months, we will take an appropriate amount of assets much shorter. So everything we do, we're trying to match the maturities to the expenses on the horizon, as well as address potential unknown cash requirements while capitalizing on the yield curve.
and so year to date, we've generated $540,000 of net income.
Hang on just a second.
I just want to check, year to date is calendar year or auditorium districts? Sorry.
Auditorium's year, okay, 12/1 through today, yeah. So that's a pretty decent amount. It should grow. Now, of course, we can't promise future returns. We can't do these sorts of things, but I can explain a little bit later. We still have quite a bit of money maturing in the very near term that will be reinvested at much higher yields than what it was giving. So even if yields fall in the next 6 months, some of these reinvestments will make that net income number go up for next year. So don't want to count your chickens before they hatch, but it's going along well, and it should be even better next year. And this is one of the reasons why. So this is the yield and duration trend of the portfolio. You can see the book yield, that's that blue line. That's the one you want to focus on. That's been just going up and up and up. Because as the Fed raises rates, you get a bond mature, you reinvest it at a higher rate. So you're just earning more and more as time goes by. Our duration, that's that green line, that's been extending a little, but it's not going to extend too much more unless maybe plans change or we get some instruction from staff that you don't need any money for 5 years or whatever, something like that. But as you can see, we started in the low 1 area, 1 year of duration when we first got the account. We worked through the cash needs, and turns out there was no problem there. So now we're finally getting a little bit longer. We're buying some 3-year bonds, and eventually we'll have this nice ladder of 3-year bonds that are constantly maturing, or maybe even 4 and 5 year bonds. But we can get to that later. Long story short, even if the duration doesn't extend from here, we do expect the yield to continue to climb for at least 6 more months. So next year's total income should be much stronger than this year. And then this is just a list of your holdings. There's nothing really to talk about. These are just treasuries and agencies. Each have their own coupon and maturity, but they are all equivalent risk. You know, you have about 1.5 to 2.5 million maturing every quarter. So if you approve a new project here today or next board meeting or whatever, and you say you're gonna need, you know, $5 million next year, well, you've got that just in maturing proceeds. You don't have to sell anything, you don't have to take losses. You've got 2 to, in some cases, 3 million maturing every quarter just to meet these unexpected cash needs. And we can increase that pace in the short term if you do approve a project. If you say, hey, we just found out in 2025, we're gonna need all of our cash. Well, that's great. From here until 2025, we'll just let everything get shorter and shorter and just roll it in 1 month T-bills or whatever is needed. That can be adjusted as.
And I'll jump in real quick there as well. Credit to the board and to the staff. We are actually spending a lot of time with other similar entities, trying to help them realize liquidity when they have underwater investments. And the reason being, we had over a decade of very, very low rates. And over time, generally, people wanted more returns, so they pushed duration longer and longer and longer. When rates finally went up, there's many, many, many organizations that were pretty significantly underwater right when they needed liquidity. And so to the auditorium district's credit, the investment account has, you know, stayed pretty short, didn't extend just to get extra yield. And as a result of that, this liquidity profile is you know, protects you against those longer rates rising, and also is providing that constant maturity should you need it.
Anyway, the portfolio is it's doing very well. It's doing as planned. With a perfect crystal ball, you maybe could have got higher yield. You maybe could have done something different, but that's only if you know exactly what the market is going to do. So I just want to highlight really quickly the fact that we don't exactly know what the market is going to do. So we want to position ourselves appropriately for kind of whatever the market can throw at us. This is the inflation situation. Brandon, would you like to tell everybody where inflation is going next quarter?
Yeah, perfect crystal ball. Yeah, and I wish I could see the future. Really, this is just showing a couple of different measures of inflation. This is the predominant thing that's been driving Fed action, which has been affecting the portfolio over the last year since we took over, which we have some yield curve slides as well, which will kind of also tell that story. But as you can see, in about mid of 2022, that red line, which is headline inflation, it includes more volatile components like energy and food. It peaked above 8%, around 9%. You all probably saw that in the headlines. And since that time, it's been improving. And you see a pretty significant improvement up until recently when we had a little bit of reversal related to rising energy prices over the last 3 months. But overall, the inflation picture is still improving overall. It still has a way to go. The Fed kind of looks at this 2% level as its target across a number of different inflation measures. But they're looking for a sustainable path towards that 2% level. So still a little bit of work to do there. And I think really what the Fed is focused on are the purple and white lines, which are core inflation. So that excludes those more volatile components of energy and food. And a big piece of this is the housing or the shelter component. It's about 35% of the CPI overall. So it's also lagged by 12 months or so, 12 to 18 months. So the adjustments in prices of housing that you've seen over the last year, we're just starting to see those kind of play into that. And you see that it's generally moving in a downward trend. We expect that inflation story to continue playing out as the shelter component continues to fall and kind of catch up with where real-time prices have gone. But those are on a track towards 2%. They're still at 4% roughly. So if you listen to the Fed commentary, they would say it's still uncomfortably high. This is why they're talking about having rates be higher for longer, which we have another slide to kind of show that story. But this isn't probably the most important component to the Fed's outlook overall. The blue line, just to kind of mention it briefly, they don't just look at realized inflation. They look at what the market's expecting inflation to be, and consumers overall. And so if that starts to rise at too fast of a level, that would also spur action on part of the Fed. But right now, really the message that they've been sending is they're comfortable. They think rates are at a sufficiently restrictive level for economic activity, and that's going to continue bringing down inflation along their trend.
Do you happen to know which number the Fed uses for COLA increases, Social Security and others?
I'm not sure which one. I think it would be headline.
Yeah, I think it's headline CPI, that orange line.
I think that's pretty consistent across government, as it's tied to that. This just kind of decomposes the inflation components, and you can kind of see how it's evolved over time. And really here, the component that we're focusing on is shelter. As I mentioned, it's 35% of the index, right around there. And it's lagged. And so you see at the bottom, that kind of just overlays on a lagged basis the Case-Shiller index with the CPI shelter component. And you can see that the Case-Shiller index has fallen pretty significantly up until recently. And that has yet to play out in that CPI shelter component. You have seen it kind of trend lower from that 8% level, more towards a 7% on a year-over-year basis. So you do see that improvement in shelter. It's across a number of other categories, you also see improvement there. So stepping away from inflation and kind of focusing on the other side of the equation that the Fed focuses on is really economic growth. And so you can look over a longer period of time. There's a lot less certainty the longer you kind of look out into the future. But just kind of focusing on Q3 GDP and more recent GDP readings that we've had, which have been stronger than expected. And that has also continued to put upward pressure on yields. Here you see that the Q3 GDP number that the Atlanta Fed puts out this kind of real-time tracking number that focuses on a lot of different real-time numbers. So one of the things, the green line is that Atlanta GDP Now estimate. So you see it's upwards of 5% right now. If you look at economists, they also have an elevated expectation above 3%, but it's still lower than that real-time number. Overall, there is an expectation for Q3 GDP to be higher. And one of the things that has been helping that is the power of the consumer. So the consumer had a big infusion of cash post-COVID. They're still continuing to work through that excess savings, as you would call it. But they also got pay raises, and a lot of the other money that didn't go directly to consumers is working its way through the economy and continuing to boost things. So we have had retail figures that have come out recently that have been above expectations pretty considerably. But then you kind of put that into contrast where there have been downward revisions to the consumer spending component of Q2 GDP, for instance. And so there's a little ambiguity about how long can the consumer continue to go and work through this excess savings, keep supporting the economy, while other parts are being pulled out of the economy. Business investment is one, and government spending kind of being in flux. But the consumer outlook is going to play a very important role. Student loans payments have come back online. That's an important component to be watching. And then also just how they're working through that excess savings and when it fully depletes. And that's expected to be right around the end of this year when that fully depletes. So it's questionable how long the consumer can continue supporting economic growth. And then the final component that we're kind of just focused on right now is the labor market. It's softened. It's still stronger than you would expect it to be at this point post-COVID. Obviously, we all heard about the 12-month period of about 300,000 jobs being added to the economy. More recently, that's been trending down. We did get a more recent 336 number that was a big surprise and did put more upward pressure on yields. And overall, when you look at economic data in the last year or so, it's really held up. Not necessarily strong across every component, but it's held up more than people expected with rates being so high. And again, softening in the economy We continue that trend to continue, especially as the consumer loses power. But the question is, are some of the labor dynamics that we're seeing, are they going to abate at any point and start to see softening in these initial unemployment claims? Or jobs being added on a monthly basis? And that would be, things like the structural shifts in our economy in terms of aging that are causing supply and demand mismatches. And then also post-COVID, some industries hoarding employees, concerned about having constraints on that. And then also, some of these other components in terms of labor that are keeping it elevated. So, that's a developing story, and we haven't seen too much softening. 125,000 jobs added per month is right around this replacement level, and we're still averaging slightly above that at 180 or so. So, still a little bit to go there until the Fed feels comfortable turning its policy.
I think we should just pause there. That's the bulk of what we wanted to present today. And we don't want to go too long, so just want to give you guys a chance to ask.
I appreciate that. Kristen, are you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here, and that answered any of the questions that I had. So thank you for the presentation.
Grace?
Mm,
I'm asking you and Kristen, because you asked the obvious question most months, which is, I read in the paper that the Fed notes are 5%. Why do we get 2%?
That explains it. Exactly. So you held a lot of bonds that were still on your books back when the Fed rate was 0%. So as those slowly work off, your average yield is increasing. It just takes time to do it. You could have sold everything you had back then at a loss and then reinvested it at 5%. But that's equivalent of you're taking a loss and earning 5 is the equivalent of just earning 3. You can't beat the market. You can't do anything. There's no free lunch. So you are slowly reinvesting. And that's why, even though we're only up to 350 right now, I think we'll be at 450, maybe even 5 by this time next year, as long as rates don't suddenly fall.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, if rates just stay where they are for a long time, which they kind of might, you'll just reinvest, and soon your average yield will equal these market yields. And then if they ever fall, you'll continue to collect that 5% yield for a good year or two, maybe even 3, depending on what we've done and what your plans were at that time. And that sort of thing.
And this is an important slide for that, just quickly. The bars declining into 2024, that shows the expected cuts of 25 basis points that the Fed is expected to engage in from today, so 2.5 through the end of next year. That has come up from about 4 cuts expected just like a month ago. And so this is kind of like that higher for longer narrative. And if that plays out, you get the reinvestment at higher yields.
And who is anticipating and why that many rate cuts in 2024?
Yeah, this is just implied from Fed funds. So interest rate futures, they can do some math to kind of figure out what the market is expecting based on the prices of those securities. And so take these with a grain of salt, because this is just what the market's expecting today, a snapshot in time, and they're changing all the time. In August of 2022, the market only expected the Fed to reach 3.5% terminal rate, and they're at 5.5 roughly. So these can change, but this is kind of the image of that higher for longer narrative that you want to see if you want to reinvest at those higher rates.
And the cuts come in, like those cuts imply that these higher rates are going to negatively impact the economy. And as a result of that, the Fed will have to cut. Now, baked into these numbers are some people that are saying rates are going to go way higher, rates are going to go way lower. So this is kind of the average of the market, which includes everyone that they're looking at, all these finance securities. It's about as holistic a view as you can take. So the market.
Kim, anything?
A question for Anne-Marie, if I may. What's our weighted average cost of capital? Do you know off the top of your head?
What I would use is the last time we went to market, which, right, and yield was 3.35.
That's all.
Yeah, well, if you were in the market now, it'd probably be 5.5.
Anything else? Thank you all.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna invite the board to call any one of you if they ever need to know any of this stuff.
We'd be happy to take the call.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mr., to take 20 seconds to answer your question a little more fully, it's Idaho Code Section 67-1210 is the state's investment sort of rules and guidelines. And our statutes effectively eventually fold us into the state's guidelines. As they mentioned, you know, some of the other government entities have additional guidelines, but in our case, we're effectively limited to whatever the state can invest in the treasurer, which is generally, you know, bonds. I mean, other stuff, but more or less, not very exciting things. Thank you. It's exciting to me that we have world-class money managers and we can see them right out our windows. Thank you. I'm gonna move to the budget, because while we still have Kristen and I have been in our capacity as the finance committee. Been in process of developing this budget. Are you thinking of going through much of it, or do you just like the
I have a
fact that
presentation.
the chair and I support it, right, Kristen?
Yeah, correct. But yeah,
I have like just a brief presentation here for everybody. So we're working on the annual budget. Our fiscal year will be 12/1 of 23 to 11/30 of 24. Next, please. Oh, I guess I have to, thank you. So some of our core strategies, as we've talked with the board in their strategic meetings, is to generate economic impact, create and maintain community spaces, empower outstanding customer service, engaging in effective communication and maximizing the health and safety of our guests and our employees. And so as we go through the budget, these are some of the things we consider in the budget process. So the governmental fund, which is the umbrella of all three. So we have the district, which is a government fund, we have the center, which is a proprietary fund, and we have the aquatics, which is a proprietary fund. So this would be all three. So our total revenue is budgeted at $22,765,000. And you can see here how it's broke up. About half of it is the hotel tax. Aquatics is 480,000. And then the rest of the lower pies are Boise Center, which is about another 10.6 million. And then our total budgeted expenditures are 19.3 million. And you can see that the general fund is 248,000, aquatics is 405,000. The majority of that is depreciation. And like 400,000 of it, excuse me. And then the general fund expenditures, or sorry, the center expenditures 18.7 million. So again, this is comparing from our forecast where we think we're going to end up at the end of 2023, and then our approved budget that we are presenting today for expenditures of 19.4. So we have an amount of an increase is $1.1 million. Of that increase, almost $650,000 is related to the increase in sales, because it's variable. So as sales go up, our cost of goods sold will go up as a percentage, or as in hard dollars. There's about 338,000 for an increase in marketing. And then the rest is just kind of scattered throughout the accounts. So some of our major impacts are your hotel tax at 11 million, your revenues for the center at 10.6, aquatics at 480. Some major capital projects that we have in the capital improvement budget is some improvements for the east building, some improvements on the west building, and I'll get into the list a little further at operations, 305,000 in AV and digital, about 435,000. The budget adds 6 new positions for personnel. Those most of those are in the operations side. And then we've also added our cost of living adjustment is about 310,000. So here's our CIP budget, 1,870,000. And so we start out with the combi ovens and the bays in the west warehouse, AV, security, and then redoing some of the Boise Center west carpet, some work on the ballroom, and then the rest just starts getting down to where you get down to the bottom and they're little $5,000 purchases. I'm not sure if you're still reading. Are you reading? Okay. So our position counts, these are, the 184 is what we had, how many checks we wrote at the 9/30 payroll. And then if we add 6 more employees, so our head count would be about 190. We have more active employees than this. It's just we rotate because of the part-time staff, they rotate through, so at any one time, we aren't paying 225 employees, but we have.
Have you subtracted the retiring executive director?
No, because he got replaced.
Ouch. We're sitting at about just 240 today on positions total. So again, that comment about how the paycheck, that's just because some of the students or some of the part-time staff haven't worked within that month or within those 2 weeks,
So just a summary of some of our employee benefits. We have the 457B Roth, we have the 401A plan. Those are the 2 retirement pieces. We have paid time off, we have 10 paid holidays. And one of the increases in our expenses is we have a 12% increase in our health insurance anticipated this year. Our renewal is a little further, so we just make an estimate, but our estimate is at least a 12% increase. And then I just added on here, we have been recognized as the best workplace for the last 2 years. And so that is just reflective of the benefits that we provide and the work culture. And here is the lease. So there were some questions about the lease, so I added some stuff in here to cover some of the questions that came out of the last board meeting. So our final payments, November 1st, 2036. The first possible redemption date is 12/15 of 2027. And our effective interest rate is 3.36%. And in those expenditures, what are not included are the transfers. So we have $1.7 million for a debt service transfer, and we have $1,875,000 in capital. $1,870,000 in capital that are additional transfers. So in summary, we are a thriving organization. We strive to ensure strong future reserves, and one of the things that the Finance Committee has asked me to do is to take a look at our reserve policy and go through and do another reassessment of the reserves. I will do that this month and provide recommendations at the next board meeting. We're working on improving efficiency and performance measures and making data-driven decisions. We moved our finance or our accounting system over into our ERP system about 3 years ago. And we're starting to get to a point where we have comparative data that we can use to help with our data-driven decisions. And then we've added Questica. So now we have 2 systems that will help us with those, with the data. We obviously have a strong community engagement with our local events. Our S&P bond rating currently is an A-. My goal is to go back and ask them to reevaluate our bond rating because we are stronger financially now than we were when we were rated at A+. When we went into COVID, they did an industry outlook and they downgraded us 1 notch because of the industry. So we're doing, the industry's come back and I think we may be able to get a bond upgrade out of it. Investments, the plan will be to add $3.2 million to the investments by the end of 2024. And our cash at the end of 2024 is forecasted to be 24 million. If you look, there is one sheet that I've provided to everybody and it's this colorful one. It is the summary of all of the different funds, what we're projecting for numbers, and then the change over on the right and some of the explanation for some of the changes, and that's the color coding. So I'll leave that with you to take if you want some light reading one night when you can't sleep. Are there any questions?
Comments or questions on the budget?
How do we forecast out 11 million in hotel room taxes?
We go and, so what I did is I took this year's revenue because this year's been a really strong year for us. And then I went through and I have a general idea of how much one room adds in hotel tax for 12 months. And so then I go in and physically calculate based on the hotels that are coming in with the estimated occupancy rate, what that will add to the hotel tax.
Does the addition of a room reduce the estimated occupancy rate?
No, we do not believe so. And the reason is because we feel like people are staying outside the district because there's not rooms available. Okay. It's not, based on what the ADR is doing, and Pat will talk about this a little bit more, but the ADR is continuing to go up. So it's not discouraging people from staying here while the occupancy is stable. So we really think that with these new hotel rooms in our district, they will be as full as the current because of the compression that everybody wanting to stay downtown.
And likely a higher price per room.
We're hearing that there's some starting to see a little resistance to the higher ADR. But at this point, we're not seeing it impact the demand.
Anything else? Could I have a motion, Kristen, to approve the budget?
Oh, TM has, Jody, TM
Oh, I'm
has.
sorry.
That's quite all right. I'd be happy to make one. So I move to approve the fiscal year end November 30th, 2023 district center and aquatics operating budgets as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Jody, we need to revise that motion.
The Salt Lake City Airport is smoke green.
It says 2023. We want to approve the 2024 budget.
That's what he meant.
Okay, well, I just wanted it on record.
Yeah.
And he has 2 more motions to make.
That indeed I do.
Yep.
I'll also move to approve the renewal of the annual appropriation lease for the Boise Center East Building. And lastly, I move to authorize the board chairman and the executive director to take all necessary steps to effect the renewal of the Boise Center East annual appropriation lease.
Second.
All those in favor, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Marketing, next. You guys doing this?
Sort of the same recap that the finance committee had regarding the meeting that we had with marketing, sales and communications folks. And the outcome of that meeting. So Chase, TM, if you want to elaborate or discuss further. Because we'll also need a motion to approve marketing.
I just note that both at the last meeting and the one before, and again in our finance committee, we've been working this issue of capacity pretty hard. The way they basically were at capacity and how do we mix it? Which I think you all have had input on, conventions versus meetings. Yeah. We've all hashed that pretty good now.
You guys are doing good revenue management.
Well, I think on that note, my main takeaways were from our committee meeting were that the sales team and the marketing team are focusing on optimizing convention dollars for higher revenue business. And also adjusting their targeting of potential clients to reflect what the market is showing demand for, which is experience-based travel. And so leaving that meeting, I felt really good about those two pivots. And lastly, I think there also was a notion of aligning our KPIs with respect to sales and converting, and not just rewarding our teams for the volume of leads, but also the conversion rate, batting rate, and quality of leads. And so those were my main three takeaways on all fronts. I applaud the team on those.
Allie?
I think that's a great recap. We are focusing on opportunities to expand events outside of Boise Center, working collaboratively with partners in the community to see what opportunities we could drum out from that. As TM said, attendees are interested in experiencing the destination that they are going to for their meeting, and competition is fierce for planners to make sure that they are getting their attendees to their meeting. And so if we can be on the forefront of offering something unique and different, which Boise is just perfectly positioned for that, I think we will be successful for plans.
Thank you. Mary Margaret, anything?
Not that we haven't covered previously, just that we're excited for the new opportunities and increase in marketing budget dollars for next year, putting those to work to help increase the conventions, meetings, conferences leads, and local meeting leads as well.
Cliff?
This is our roadmap for the year. We really have our goals outlined, and it's a reflection of the budget for those particular projects. But our goal is to keep Boise Center top of mind, to keep it in the forefront of planners' minds so that they will engage in conversations with our sales team and get their event here.
I'd encourage everyone to read the 2024 marketing and sales plan. It's very, very well done. I read it cover to cover last night. And with that, I'd entertain a motion.
Move the marketing plan as presented in the 2024 marketing communication sales plan book.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi,
Hey, Kristen's still here.
still here. I think I board in about 15 minutes, so we're good.
We move to the highlight of the program, our distinguished soon-to-be Director Emeritus has the floor.
Thank you. Chairman, members of the board. As we look forward, September, as noted, is $1 million month, and we'll get a little more into that. Which for September, October is always, been our busiest month in tradition over the last couple of years. We've been able to hit $1 million month in October, but September surpassed all of our expectations and was a great month. Kay Dillon and I attended IMAX in Las Vegas, and there's a photo I'll show in a minute, but international meetings and expositions, I've been attending since about 2018, and this was absolutely the busiest IMAX that we've ever experienced. Very successful. Nathan, sales manager from the Grove Hotel, was with us. And then Andrew Height and Shannon Mortensen from the CV from Visit Boise also were there. It's a joint venture booth for us, and we ran out of everything. We take chips, root chips. It's a Idaho company. We serve 44 North Huckleberry vodka in the afternoons, which is very popular. And then I give away trout flies, stone flies. And we literally 5:10 at night, and the show, we had the bar until 5:30, the show went till 6, but at about 5:10 and 5:15, literally the last ounce was poured from the bottles that we had reserved for that day, which had never happened. We normally we're trying to figure out a way to get the remaining bottles out of the convention center and brought home, but not this year. All the chips were gone. I want to recognize Cliff for his swag ideas. You know, some of these booths still give the pins and, you know, the pads and that kind of thing, and people love the swag, and it draws to the booth. And I will tell you that there were probably, I'm guessing, at least 12 to 15 really interested folks. In fact, they want 2024, and Nathan's eyes got about that big because like when, because again, the demand at the hotel and here are both so high. But a couple of groups are interested in summer of 24. So I'm excited. I think that the whole group, I mean, we were all busy. So anyway, it went really, really well. And the team in general that was there did an outstanding job. I think Boise as a community, and certainly Boise Center, was absolutely well represented. And the demand, a lot of 500, 600 attendee meeting planners came, and all the appointments were scheduled. So, and then Allie coordinated a gathering of the customer advisory board attendees that were at IMAX. And I think there were, I want to say 12 or 15 that were there, and they all are RSVP that they stopped by the booth on Wednesday afternoon, and they all showed 100%, which is, you don't get that kind of response, and they were referring other meeting planners to us. Anyway, long story short, IMAX was very, very successful. Cody's moved into the executive director's office. I have my cart that I push around and find where I can. My last day in the office will be after the board meeting, November 16th. Staffing levels to the point where we're supporting 1,000-person events and even higher now. So again, I'm very proud of where we are. Cody is already is.
Sorry, Pat, I see the November meeting scheduled for the 19th.
That's a Saturday. I don't know how you, yeah, I don't know how it.
You got 16.
My calendar also says 16.
Okay,
My calendar is.
so you'll just fix it. Sorry.
Oh, you're looking at 2024, sir.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're right.
And then currently the sales and marketing offices are under remodel. That was actually planned and budgeted for next year, but we had capital funds available that we hadn't spent. We've been very conservative on the capital expenditures this year. And Dave Rigori, who's in charge of our maintenance, was able to schedule with ESI. They had time. So currently the offices across the street, new paint, new carpeting, new code base, and then they'll do HVAC probably December, January. So I think I forwarded I think Mary Michael sent this out to the board. We've been recognized best of meetings today. In fact, Marin Bright who owns the company. I had set up an appointment with her in Las Vegas and we had a great visit. Again, she had been recommended to bring an event here by
Freeman. Sorry.
Yeah, by Freeman, that they did an event here in August. And so I was able to meet with her as the owner of the company. And the meeting went very, very well. She's been very impressed with what she's been hearing. This is the Clearwater Conference that was held in September. Top workplaces. Cody, what's the second?
Subcategory that we were actually awarded not only the top workplaces of 2023, but based off the survey results, we were awarded a subcategory for included senior management. So basically they take a look at the survey and then they identify where top performers are in certain sectors of that survey, and included senior management was the one that we received an additional certificate for, based on that our leadership knows what's going on, is kind of clued in and ear to the ground. So we're proud of the team for that.
This is IMEX, and so you got Nathan on the end, Andrew, Shannon, Kay, and myself. I gotta tell you too, that the design that Allie, Cliff, I'm not sure, I don't know if MM was involved with that as well as the CVB. We paid for this booth. People love the booth. They stopped by, they were taking pictures, they were making comments, and it doesn't really show as well here, but the height of where you see Boise, the height of that, you can see well across the trade show floor. And it's just, again, it's a showpiece. And I think the board can be very, very proud of the efforts that are being made on behalf of the center and certainly the city. So to the numbers, kind of a broken record on this one as we get towards the end of the year. The numbers are all positive. We continue to see positive growth. The room tax revenues certainly help. The operational revenues and the gross profit percentages continue to be strong. Same thing with the conversion of events and attendance. I think that our attendance total will actually end up a little bit better. We've filled in, this is more reflective now in 2024 because it's December, but for a couple of months, the team wasn't taking any more Christmas parties. Just we were trying to, again, manage to our employee base. And Stacy Lisby has started filling in December now. So I think that the numbers for it'll be a great start for 2024, barring anything unforeseen. But I think year end, again, it's not even the, great that we're doing more events. The attendance we don't have any control over, but I still think it's going to be even closer than where we're forecasting. Particularly with Festival of Trees, that's really the big one in November that'll determine where we end up year end. The occupancy is back strong. I actually was showing Chase here a few minutes ago the star report, Smith Travel, for actually September. I just literally got it. And where last month I was talking about how we've been down year on year in demand for the last several months, and the rates stabilized. Well, quite frankly, the rate went up $6 year over year, and demand went up another couple of thousand room nights. So again, the market is fluctuating, but it's extremely strong. In fact, the room revenue, the hotel room revenue, is up $1.6 million over prior years. So again, it lends to a very positive room tax year for us as we finish up. Demand and revenues, again, very, very strong. The convention pipeline, as you've heard every month, that 2024 is pretty much in the books. Based on what I was hearing at IMEX, talking, with clients and the conversations the clients are having with the other folks who are working with the booth. A lot of folks are looking at 25, again, a couple even at 24. And we're just, if we can get them in the summertime, that would be great. But the rest of the year is pretty well booked. And the meeting planners are definitely looking hard at 26. So I think the sales team is gonna do well. I think the event managers are gonna have their work cut out for them, trying to make sure that they're able to balance the local and the conventions together. So some good definites in there, acknowledging viticulture, signed for December of 23 this year. That's one that the team's been working on for a while. And then national conference with for 2026. I don't know what the acronym is.
So Association for Enology and Viticulture, we're hosting their board retreat this December, which we bid on their national convention. So getting their board here, we think is a really good indicator that we will also secure their national convention.
Henry?
Good afternoon. As Pat said, not to belabor, but we are having an exceptional year. Revenues are up across the board with the exception of aquatics. And that's just due to timing of the construction project. Right now, we're at $3.8 million better than budget. Here you can see that the tax revenues, we've been running along projecting at about 10.4. And we just had another $1 million month, which was not anticipated. So the forecast right now shows that we're going to end up somewhere around 10.8 million. Boise Center, again, if you compared to 2022 and 2019, you'll notice I don't have 20 and 21 in here because those were the COVID years. But 2019 was our best year prior to COVID, and you can see the trend just continues to go up. As Pat said, there's just a lot of demand for Boise, and while the national trends are a little different, Boise seems at this point to not be following the national trends. And we're a fiscal year in forecast of a little over 10 million, and our 12-month rolling revenue is was 10.4 last month, and it's increased 100,000 to 0.5. But overall, 11 of 12 past months are record operating revenues when compared to the same period in the prior year. There are some variances across the board, nothing significant that would cause concern. And our net loss is 2.1 million less than budget. Gross margin is higher than prior year. And our revenues are over budget by 1.4 million. And as Pat said, our capital expenditures are a little lower than budgeted, and more than likely will carry through to the end of the year. Square foot utilization, you can see when we talk about getting full, and so anything that's up, getting up to that green line is where we're pretty much at capacity. So you can see here that like in July and August, we have some space and availability to fill in. December is the holiday parties will still continue to add. And November looks to me like we need to get some, like we don't have the festival of trees in there in the forecast. And so once we flush out that November month, it'll be up there in the green, I would imagine. In the aquatics center, we're billing rent out at $40,000 a month. The investment in the aquatics building is now at 9.6 million. And there were some questions last month about some of the rental provisions. So I just wanted to go over those real quick. So one of the questions was the capital and who's responsible for capital. How are we monitoring the capital? And under the lease, the disposition of facilities, it says the district isn't under any obligation, basically for the equipment, and the lessee may remove the equipment without responsibility or accountability, provided that an equal is substituted or the lessee can reasonably determine that no replacement is necessary. So if, for example, if they aren't using the equipment anymore and they sell it, they would not be required to replace it. And then section 0.53B, we were asking about the tax credits and the reporting, and so Ryan and I need to still get together and come up with a mutually acceptable process. But no later than February 15th of the following year, so February 15th. They could get a tax credit not to exceed 50%, or a rent credit, sorry, not to exceed 50% of the rent payment based on hotel tax collections. Any other questions?
Comments, questions for Anne Marie or Pat? Take the motion, go ahead.
What are the major drivers of our gross margin being at that 19% higher than last year?
Higher AV. Our AV, we continue to make investments in AV, and so we're able to generate more revenue off the AV, and it has a significantly higher gross margin than food and beverage.
Add just a few things that we're doing from a strategic side of the bookings, the type of bookings that we're doing is helping on that. And then also just from a staffing level, we're getting creative with our planning as the events are, does the event care which way they're facing? So if we can say, so for example, last week for the chamber gala, we kept the room facing the exact same way for the next night for Special Olympics, and the client didn't mind. They were able to take advantage of the same AV setup. That saves labor on our end, so be more strategic on that.
Well done. It's pretty strong, 19%.
Well, never underestimate the nerds.
Anne Marie mentioned in her prior discussion, I think in the budget one, about the being able to pay off. I can't imagine why you'd ever pay off the bonds given where interest rates are now, but in any event, that December 15th, 2027, that's the first years that is callable. That means it's callable on December 15th, 2026. So I can't imagine why you would, but it would be technically December 15th, 2026. Call.
Thank you, Mike. I have a motion to approve the monthly activity and financial report.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. Oh, you're still here.
I'm hanging on. I might make the full thing.
Are you on a payphone?
Not quite. I mean, I guess I pay for it, but hey.
You're on your mobile.
Yeah,
Okay.
correct.
Idaho Aquatics.
Brian will do much better than I did last month.
I don't have much of an update for you. I'll just give you a brief thing and ask if you guys had any questions. Everything continues to go really well. Lesson program attending dad users almost daily, which has been fantastic. I don't have the number on the total kind of users or total participants that we've had in that program to date. Currently, we have about 700 active enrolled students, which is about double what we had hoped to have at this point, 5 months of operation. So we're very excited about that. The swim teams and water polo activities continue to increase. So all the teams that have been there have expanded their memberships. We're seeing more daily users from that standpoint. High school season is about to end. We've got the District 3 championship meet will be held at the facility on Thursday. And that'll host about 500 athletes. Those are all local athletes from District 3, but still be an exciting day of swimming in the facility. And that'll kind of wrap up the main competition schedule for this calendar year, but then we'll hit the ground running in January with a large invitational meet that will bring in 400 outside participants the weekend. It's Martin Luther King weekend in January. So we're pretty excited about that as well. Operational, everything's just going great. We're very happy with where we're at. Couple kind of at this point, pretty minor items that have to be wrapped up from CM and CEM. As part of kind of punch list items, but for the most part, we're just kind of operating as normal right now. So it's been great.
Thank you. Comments or questions for Ryan? Any other business to come before the board? I noticed.
Sorry, I do have a question for Ryan. How is your financials looking and when is your fiscal year? And do you plan on doing a presentation to the board on your money?
Yeah, so we're calendar year, which means this year will be a little bit funky because we didn't start till May 29th. So we will have a partial year kind of financial report. We have to do that in the first quarter of 2024 to reflect the 2023 numbers. We're in that process of working through some of those numbers for various parties as it is, including investors and banks and everything else. So happy to share that with this group as well. But we're ahead of schedule, right? We really anticipated, again, losing money the first year, taking about 12 months to ramp up our operations. And we're about 95% of covering our operating costs at this point with the revenue. So we're close to breaking even as we can. Probably 4 or 5 months ahead of schedule. So we're pretty excited about it.
That's great. Thanks, Ryan.
Anything else? I notice we're honored to have our political consultants and public relations folks, Reberger Sullivan. Any comments? I hope you're here to observe and not to tell us we're in trouble when the legislature gets back.
Mr. Chairman, not yet. We're enjoying the period before the legislature returning to town, but it's starting to pick up. Nothing specific to report. Thank you.
Sure.
Take that gavel from